Hello and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. Here's an example. Recently I spoke about aquariums being used in a classroom, being used in a home to observe tropical fish, pond life, things like that. And I got thinking, somewhere I'd read that the aquarium was invented by a woman, and I couldn't remember her name. Then I remembered, I think it was in a book about women scientists. And I have a book about women scientists. So I got it off the shelf. The Sky's the Limit. Stories of discovery by women and girls. It's by Catherine Thimish. And I said, okay. And I opened it up, looked at the contents, turned to the introduction, and I think at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow it with the most useful gift, that gift would be curiosity. Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, she was quite a humanitarian and cared for people and wanting to make their life better for them. And I'm sure she had some good effects on her husband and some of his views. Chapter 1, Beatrix Potter. Lichens are both algae and fungi. Best known for her lovable rabbits, Beatrix Potter was a renowned author and illustrator of numerous classic children's books. But her first love was natural history. From an early age, she collected and painted plants, flowers, birds, and other animals. She was fascinated to apply the plants she drew and undertook an intense study of fungi, spending many hours at the nearby British Museum of Natural History, studying them under a microscope and making detailed, scientifically accurate drawings. In 1896, through her studies, she discovered that a lichen consists of both an alga and a fungus, living interdependently or separately, but as one. Previously, a lichen was thought to be just an algae, with perhaps a fungus present only as a parasite. She made accurate drawings of her finds, but the scientific community showed no interest. Disillusioned, she abandoned her scientific pursuit and took up illustrating. It would be many years before her discovery of the duality of lichens was finally accepted as fact. It's fun to note, though, that many of the paintings of plant life that adorn her famous books originally began as scientific renderings for a book on fungi that she was hoping someday to write. Now, I've seen a book of her natural history drawings, and it's marvelous. And I'm thinking that I got it from the UVic library, and so when I next go there, they do have one. I've checked. I will try to get that book and share it with you. Sometimes nice to see a little bit of the book, more than just a cover or a title. Now, there's another book. It's a biography. The Tale of Beatrix Potter by Margaret Layne, L-A-N-E. And a short ways in, page 43, it tells of her experience at the Natural History Museum in London, and how how the director, with evident pleasure, pointed out lacking the diagrammatic extension of detail necessary for scientific usefulness. It wasn't sort of like, well, here, you know, these are really lovely, and now here are the things that we look for and try to include in our drawings of plants, and be nurturing. But no, she was rebuffed, and then this unknown young woman had conducted independent experiments and developed theories. She even went so far as to have her own ideas about the propagation of the spores of moles, and to offer a theory that lichens were actually dual organisms, funguses living in close association with algae. It's the tone that comes across as the director is speaking to her. Well, let's see who's in this book. After Beatrix Potter, is there anybody that I recognize? Jane Goodall. Here's Jane Goodall. Now, she ends up leaving England. One thing leads to another, and she goes and gets a job in Africa, in Kenya. Oh, I mean, that's beyond the normal steps that somebody might do. But she was very interested, and lo and behold, she has the good fortune of meeting a couple who work together, and she gets work from them, and as they see her calmness, her attention to detail, her powers of observation, and her love for this world, quite different from England, they encourage her. They are the ones who plant the seed about her going and studying chimpanzees. And lo and behold, in this same book, there's Mary Leakey, who would work with her husband in this gorge in northern Tanganyika. And so typically Mary worked alongside her husband, anthropologist and archaeologist Louis Leakey. But on this particular day in July 1959, he was ill and had remained in camp in bed. It's amazing how one thing leads to another sometimes, and how chance happens. She'd promised some nearby filmmakers that they could film one of the excavations from start to finish. So the site she'd originally planned to excavate was put on hold until the cameraman arrived. This morning, Mary was examining a different site, site FLK. In a way, just killing time. One scrap of bone that caught and held my eye was not lying loose on the surface, but projecting from beneath. And that leads to an amazing find. Now, chapter 3. This is in Spain now, 1879. This family has an estate, and a cave was recently discovered on his estate. And Maria de Tula wandered out of the dimly lit main chamber where her father was busy digging for ancient stone artifacts. While she was exploring with the use of a candle, she found a small crawl space that led to a hidden alcove. She scooted through. "Taurus Pinatas!" she yelled. Painted bulls. Her father followed her voice to the small room where she stood beholding this candle and pointing in amazement at the paintings on the ceiling. It was an astonishing discovery. The painted animals were actually extinct bison, not bulls, and were unlike any cave art ever before found. Later it was determined that the cave paintings were 15,000 years old from the Stone Age. The next person were actually a group of 4 girls. Rachel Friedstein, Jessica Bernblum, Lauren Schultz, Rainier Tripp. Now, what they were working on, this is in 1998, 8th graders, they learned that 25 to 33% of adolescents experience lower back pain. And that got them thinking that maybe there's some connection with a backpack laden with books, and that when the spine and the body was still developing. And so they conducted some tests and proved to be there was a connection. The careful use of the right use of the backpack, both straps absolutely must be worn to avoid painful back trouble. Well, that was interesting. Then, get the lead out. This time, 1977, this girl, Katie Murray, and she is wonders about the soil where people grow their gardens where paint chips off, and city houses are old and the apartments are worn, and so there's paint chipped, and that most houses before 1977 were coated not only with the latest shade, but also with a primarily lead-based paint, which was poisonous. So this talk about lead got her thinking about the poisoning of vegetables. So this is actually 1998. She decided to formulate a test, and she planted different plants, put parts of lead in the plants, and then after the fruit had ripened on the plants, tomatoes, spinach, pepper, beets, and lettuce, no fruit there, but she found that the tomatoes and green peppers had survived, but the lead had contaminated the soil and the other plants did not survive. So she called around to see if anyone would test them for me, because I didn't have the equipment. Finally, I called the FDA, and a man there named Mr. Hughes said he would test them. Explained Katie. Now, what a different reception, eh? So I brought the plants to him, and he cut them up. It was a long process he had to go through. And then he used a spectrograph test, and that's how he found out how much lead was in them. Now, Mr. Hughes was a chemist with Food and Drug Administration. He was stunned. His tests showed that Katie's green peppers had a lead content of 0.13 parts, while the tomatoes contained 0.06 parts of lead per million. The established safety standard for children is 0.08. Anything above that is considered dangerous. So that led to other, this was done in Kansas, other places trying to be very particular about the soil in which plants were grown in. And that makes me think of cities where a block of buildings is torn down, and that block then becomes a community garden. Drinkable puddles. Rachel Charles. For most Americans, getting water is as easy as turning on the tap or pushing a button on the fridge. So reliable is our access to fresh water that we forget, or perhaps have never been aware, that clean, safe drinking water is simply not available for everyone. An 8th grader thinks that should change. While researching a project for science class, 14-year-old Rachel Charles was drawn to the pressing problem of undrinkable water in many parts of the world. Now, I don't know if she'd heard about plain talk about drinking water, but she was on to certainly a topic. What she found was shocking. An estimated 1 billion people throughout the world was drinking unsafe water and using unsafe bathing water. The water is chock full of harmful bacteria that can cause devastating diseases. Rachel learned that unsafe water claims the lives of nearly 4 million children every year. In addition, it causes nearly 900 million in developing countries are unable to boil their water because the fuel is limited and costly, and other resources like firewood are scarce. So, how can we take water and purify it? How can we? And so she sets up a system of solar water sanitization, and she uses the sun, reflectors, a black plastic bowl, newspaper around the bowl, and to boil the water. Pretty amazing. Well, she's maybe solved that. Whether it will be employed, whether we spread that idea and use, I don't know. But I'm inspired by what these young people are doing and thinking about and trying to take problems and solve them, or find a solution that is helps without sort of a compromise, in a sense. Pretty neat. The one thing I didn't find was, who was that woman who invented the aquariums? Well, until next time, bye for now.